Richard oversaw everything we did. I mean, right down to telling me how Karen would hold the microphone, or if she would have laughed or not, you know, what her sense of humor was. Oh no, she wouldn't laugh, or she would laugh, that she would have thought that was funny. He was very involved. Every day we got to set, there were new cuts made to the script. It was pretty clear to us that the changes were being made to protect the family, so that anything that we portrayed in the film that could have possibly been perceived as negative toward the family was removed or rewritten in such a way that they weren't uncomfortable. And I don't know from whom that came, whether Agnes was reading the script and giving notes to Richard, or whether it was Richard's idea or some combination thereof, but the script that we started with was not the end result that the audience saw. I don't believe Agnes told Karen the night before she died that she loved her. I don't believe that Agnes ever told Karen that she loved her. In the scene when Karen was finally getting treatment in New York City for anorexia, and they called for the family meeting, and Agnes's reaction was, well, we don't need to tell her. We don't do things that way. She knows. She knows. But I don't know that Karen ever did know, because she was always overlooked for Richard.
Go ahead.
Oh, for heaven's sake. This is ridiculous. We came 3,000 miles for this nonsense? We don't need to prove anything to Karen. She knows we love her.
You know, people have a tendency to focus on the person who sings. I mean, the lead singer or whatever. I mean, in the beginning, that was really not a problem. But of course, you know, when the Go-Go's became super popular, most of the focus is on me. And it did cause problems within the band. And also because I had my own personal issues I was dealing with, that made me kind of, I wasn't present, really. I wasn't doing a lot of the work that I should have been doing, so there was that resentment, too. I was getting all the glory and not doing a lot of the work. So that did cause a lot of problems.
You know, Richard was praised as being the genius. Richard was literally, in the photo album that I was able to look at in their home, there was a picture of Richard at the piano, and it said, Richard, the prodigy. And I turned the page, and it was a picture, it was like, Karen. You know, it was like, and they moved across country for Richard's music career. He was always supposed to be the star. I forget who told me, but I think they played with Boston Pops. She sang. And the parents came backstage, and Agnes didn't say anything to Karen. She congratulated Richard.
Well, I would think that, you know, that even being brother and sister would add an extra added tension between, you know, if Richard was supposedly the lead of the band, and then Karen singing, she becomes a star. Of course, there's going to be that you know, a problem with that, it seems to me.
Clearly, Richard was always in control of them as a creative team, and you know, Carpenters as a brand. He wrote the music, he found the music, he produced the music. He was responsible. He was and is a musical genius in that way. He created their sound, and he was used to being in control.
Going from the Go-Go's, back then, around the third album, it became a problem, that for sure. And you know, it causes jealousy and whatever, but that's also normal. I mean, that happens to, it's kind of cliche, it happens to, and I'm sure it happened to, there's a lot of that, you know, sort of tension between Karen and Richard, I would think.
I can't speculate what Richard thought or thinks. I have heard that he wasn't happy with the production. He had influence over everything, at least for as long as I was involved in it. I don't know what happened in post, but in pre-production and production, Richard was involved every moment of every day. And perhaps in spite of all the whitewashing, the story still showed things that he didn't want to look at in terms of the familial relationships and the influence his mother had on Karen's health. Perhaps. It's not for me to judge. So I think, our belief systems as human beings get set pretty young in our family nucleus and then with society. And many of us grow up with belief systems that are absolutely false, but we believe them. They're real to us. You're fat, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're never going to amount to anything, whatever it is. If our parents tell us that, we believe it. And it takes a lot of work as an adult to overcome the tape, and the tape can also be you're brilliant, you're a genius, you're a prodigy, so belief systems don't get changed very easily. They require deliberate work. And I don't know if Karen was ever able to overcome the belief systems. There was guilt over being the star. Richard didn't like being second to her in the band. Once she came out from behind the drums, Richard didn't like that she was getting all the attention. Agnes certainly didn't like she was getting all the attention. Don't they realize Richard's the star. And so Karen was never validated that way. How could she own how great she was, how talented she was, if her own family didn't validate it? I think she felt really guilty. If you think about it, they were 25 and 27 years old, respectively, when they finally moved out. And they didn't even really move out. They had to kind of finagle a way to make it okay that they bought Agnes and Harold a house and moved them into it to try to at least separate. And they missed so many milestones in their development as a result of being under the thumb of Agnes. Neither one of them had had a successful romantic relationship. Prior to Karen's death, neither one of them had. And then Richard got married after that. But it seems that their primary relationship was with one another, which is strange because, from a strictly biological standpoint, we're all supposed to sever our relationship with our parents after puberty. That comes down to the survival of the species. We're not supposed to stay in our own family nucleus. We're supposed to go out in the world and find somebody outside of our own flesh and blood, with whom to start a family. And neither one of them were able to do that.